Welcome to IVF This, episode 83, Why We Suck at Infertility. Welcome to IVF This. I'm your host, Emily Ginn. After 10 years of primary and secondary infertility due to both male and female factor infertility, I am now the mother to 3 beautiful miracles. I am married to my favorite person in the world. I'm a social worker, a life coach, and an IVF warrior. I'm here to teach you how to manage your mind and emotions during your IVF journey, to break free from anxiety and regain control of your life, even in the midst of infertility. I'm going to teach you how to say IVF this to how we think about, talk about, and experience infertility. Let's go. Hello, my beautiful friends. I hope you are all doing so well today. I'm really excited to talk with you all about sucking at infertility. I was actually talking with a client the other day, and the conversation around infertility in general came up, and we talked about a lot of things, but she said, why is infertility so hard for us? And I just kind of replied, because we suck at it. And while both of us laughed in that moment, I really got to thinking, yeah, we truly do kind of suck at infertility. And not kind of, we really do. Not that any of us want to be, say, good at infertility, but it's mostly around the suffering that is experienced by so many of us around this infertility. That's kind of what we're talking about. And so I wanted to outline a few reasons as to why we suck at infertility. So without further ado, here are my top 5 ways that we suck at infertility. They are in no particular order, and I just stopped at 5 in the interest of time, but I could go on and on. Reason number 1 why we suck at infertility is because we wholeheartedly believe that there is a specific order for family creation, which is pretty much just consists of having sex, making a baby, have a baby, and raise a baby. And of course, this is a very heteronormative language, but even let's say you're undergoing intrauterine insemination, then the expected outcome is 1, maybe 2 inseminations, and boom, baby, birth, raising. Like we have this seared into our brains that there is only one path to baby. Of course, this is reinforced over centuries and in our everyday culture because this is how we have seen it played out time and time again. And then there's the complicating factor of secondary infertility, because maybe we had the belief reinforced by our own journey, and then we're trying to have it again, but then we're experiencing difficulty. So we have this historical reference, culture, socialization, and maybe our own journey telling us that this is the way it should be happening. And of course, whenever we believe that something should be a certain way, and there's any deviation, then it's terrible. It's a terrible thing. I'm terrible. I'm trash. This journey is trash. All of this drama that happens in our brain. It's very easy to get committed to this belief that it should be a certain way. So when it's not, it's awful. Instead, even just by looking at the data, in the US, 1 in 8 couples, and it's 1 in 6 couples worldwide struggle with infertility. Those are not little numbers. The World Health Organization's report on infertility states that approximately 48 million couples, or 186 million individuals globally, experience infertility. And yet we still have this internalized and cultural narrative that this is the only way it can and should be. Is this the experience of the majority? Yes. Does that make it the only experience? No. It just makes it the experience of the majority. Now, there is a difference of expecting something to go a certain way and kind of rolling with the punches versus expecting it to go a certain way and then using that against yourself. And that's what I'm referring to. It's always what we make a situation or a circumstance mean, which is usually that we're terrible, worthless, or whatever. That's the part that makes the suffering experienced during infertility unbearable at times. Okay, I got to speed this up so we can get through them all. Okay. Number 2, why we suck at infertility. And this goes along hand in hand with number 1, but we think there is a right and wrong way to do infertility or fertility treatments. I cannot even begin to tell you how many times I've talked with clients about how they're not doing this or not taking that, not exercising enough, exercising too much, avoiding alcohol, avoiding caffeine, avoiding carbs, but then like binge on alcohol or caffeine or carbs because they get to the point where they say, F it. They'll say, I'm not taking enough supplements. I'm not taking the right ones. I need to get rid of all the plastic in the house, all the fragrances. I have to be stress-free. I have to do acupuncture. I have to do energy healing. Guys, the list is endless. And it's this intense black and white thinking of this is the only way to get pregnant, or for these things to be considered the right things. Well, just like that first thing that we suck at, when we make something the only way or the right way, then any deviation from that expectation, we then interpret as failure, which more often than not, we interpret ourselves as failures. And this is certainly not a shot at any of those things. By themselves, they can be enormously beneficial. But again, it's when we use these things or the absence of these things against ourselves. Let's say you believe that acupuncture is essential for a successful IVF round. You've read about it, you've had that belief reinforced by people that you've spoken to within the infertility community, but maybe you don't have the ability to get to regular acupuncture appointments, either logistically or financially. Well, if you believe that this is the secret sauce and it's not feasible for you in the manner in which that you have decided is the special secret sauce, then you're probably going to feel like you're failing. And that's where these things become like shackles on us, choking down fistfuls of supplements every day. And then you forget a day and all of a sudden it's a crisis because you didn't do it every day, right? The emphasis on like it has to be perfect. That's the opposite of the peace of mind that you're hoping to get by doing the quote unquote right things. Number 3, we think something magical will happen when we get pregnant or we have that baby. I talked about this a lot in the episode A Baby Won't Solve For, but we have this belief that once we get pregnant or once we get to hold that baby, then we will get to feel at peace without pain or stress or self-hatred. I hope you've been with me long enough to know that that's not how our brains work. But our emotions are not created by our circumstances. And I talk a lot about that on this podcast. Our thoughts create our feelings. So if I am thinking I am a piece of crap because I can't get pregnant, then when I get pregnant, that thought is probably going to morph into, well, I'm probably going to lose this pregnancy because I'm a piece of crap. And then that thought will just keep recycling itself based on our circumstances, because that is how our brains work. Think of your brain as like a conveyor belt at a factory that only builds a few different things. The factory default setting just keeps pumping out the same thing over and over to very small varying degrees. There's no drama, right? Conveyor belts don't have any drama. It's just a habit. That's how your brain works with unconscious thoughts. There's no drama in the brain. It's just sending up the thought, I'm a piece of trash, and then we flatly agree with it without question. So when we have this belief that something magical will happen when we get pregnant, when we get the job, when we get the house, whatever it is, and nothing magical does happen, and of course I'm talking about in our brain, not the magical creature in your belly or that you're holding in your arms, whatever, then all of a sudden we are like, well, what the hell is wrong with me? I now have this thing that I have always wanted and I still don't feel better. Or I thought I would feel better, or however that comes to you. Nothing magical happens. Our brains, regardless of the situation. You want to feel better overall? Then stop letting the asshole in your brain run amok. Which is a good thing that you're listening to this podcast, because that's what we talk about. Thought work is never done, because there is never a point in your life where you don't have unconscious thoughts that are inherently negative. It's just not going to happen. Life doesn't stop, so there's always the potential for pain, a potential for anxiety. I find it fascinating, and it happens in every human experience, but of course also happens during infertility or fertility treatments, that as humans, there is a part of us that doesn't want pain, that does not want anything that we would classify as negative. Like logically, we know it's supposed to be there. Logically, we know we can expect it, but there's a big part of us that wants to avoid it at all cost. And so we're always looking for greener grass. We're always looking for the exit ramp. We're always looking for something better instead of choosing to stay present with what is, because that's all we'll ever have, is what is happening right now. What is all we'll ever have, but we're always trying to escape it in pursuit of something better. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with pursuing goals. I love goals. But to say that life will be better somewhere else is to kind of miss the point. And I think that we really just have the wrong goal. I was talking to a client about this the other day about accepting what is, and acceptance doesn't mean liking what is. And what a lot of us are trying to do is change what is because we think we can't enjoy our lives as it is. And so that's kind of to miss the point completely. Number 4, our approach to family building has changed over time. And what I mean is that family building for the entirety of man's existence has been unprotected penis in vagina sex. That makes a baby. So that's like 200,000 to 300,000 years. The first recorded IUI occurred in the 1700s. The first sperm bank was built in the Midwest, I think in the 50s. The first successful IVF baby was born in 1978. In the course of recorded time, fertility treatments is still relatively new, especially the more modern approaches. And since part of our brain has evolved over these 300,000 years, but to our unconscious brain, it really hasn't. And these are still considered new technologies, right? Quote unquote, new technologies. It takes our society and culture a long time to accept things that fall out of what is expected or traditional, even though that's completely subjective. So our approach has changed a lot. And since it's still not a widely discussed topic, the less experience we have of it being in our cultural vernacular, the less familiar we are with it. The less familiar we are with something, the less comfortable we are going to feel when discussing it. The less comfort we feel about discussing it, the less it is discussed overall, and thus the cycle continues and continues and continues. Okay, number 5, we focus only on the outcome, the baby or the babies. The emotional experience of infertility is very unique and extremely personal. But what is almost universal is the hyper focus on the getting of the baby, that so much so you kind of lose yourself in pursuit of that dream. We have the faux spirational world of social media, toxic positivity, emotional illiteracy, and emotional childhood. All of these things make for an incredibly overwhelming experience because when we come to a place or any point where we experience big feelings, we tend to shut down or try as quickly as possible to get rid of them. Then you've got an asshole brain churning out lie after lie, and you've not managing your brain around any of it. You tell yourself that you cannot plan things, that everything feels uncertain, all of this stuff. So we tend to neglect our mental health in this pursuit. We think of it as taking too much time or effort or money that we don't feel we can sacrifice. I mean, even that word sacrifice means that something is going to suffer by me choosing to do this, right? Which of course is a lie our brains offer us because it wants us to stay stuck. Investing, whether it's emotionally, physically, time, money, takes effort, and our brain doesn't want to produce effort. It spends all day doing things, and any way that it can cut corners to be efficient and not have to produce anything, right? Physical, emotional, financial, it doesn't matter. Our brain is going to take the shortcut to not do anything. Taking care of ourselves, whatever that looks like, could be a 20-minute walk, therapy, coaching, journaling, whatever it is, it takes effort. It does not take much effort to lay around and scroll social media, watch Netflix, get lost in online shopping, but those things don't actually make you feel better. They numb you more than anything. And so, yes, it does take some effort to feel better, but not much more effort to continue to feel terrible. So those are the top 5. But I do want to include that this one thing that I think is pretty universal. We think our feelings are problems, and we're never taught how to allow them. We think any negative emotion, which emotions aren't inherently positive or negative, it's just the moral judgment that we assign them. Anyway, we think they are problems. and we think we need to solve for them. So we have no idea what to do with the uncomfortable ones because no one has told us otherwise. We have difficulty naming our emotions. We have difficulty describing our emotions. We have difficulty explaining the emotional experience in our body. We have difficulty tolerating emotions that feel uncomfortable long enough to allow them to be there to actually process through them. When we think feelings are problems, then we feel uncomfortable. We interpret that as something we're not supposed to be feeling, but come on, that's really expected during an infertility journey. You're going to have quote unquote negative feelings. Like you can just count on it. Because we believe feelings are a problem, then we don't know how to feel good when someone else is feeling bad. It makes us uncomfortable, which is where cliches and platitudes come from. The "it'll happen when it happens" or "just relax" are normal and natural reflexes to someone witnessing an uncomfortable feeling and kind of reflecting out because they don't know what to do with it. So this comes up for everyone. Both those having an uncomfortable emotion and those witnessing someone having an uncomfortable emotion. That's why we dread things like baby showers, gender reveals, sometimes family or friend gatherings, because there's a lot of opportunities for us to have thoughts and feelings, and in turn, a lot of opportunities for people to witness us having big thoughts and big feelings, and them saying something that you might feel as insensitive or just downright asinine. It all stems from our culture's inability to tolerate negative emotions. And this is one of the first things we work on in my one-to-one practice, and one of the most common things that I cover in my complimentary mini sessions is that feelings are not a problem. They're never problems. They are experiences. They are data. They're telling you something that is going on for you. That's all. And then we get to work to understand how to process those emotions. So if that or anything that I covered today is something that you would like to work on, go to my website, www.ivfthiscoaching.com, or on my social media profile links and schedule a mini session and we can talk about it. Okay, my friends, I hope you enjoyed listening to this as much as I enjoyed writing an episode about how we suck at infertility. But that is what I have for you today. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of IVF This. If you like what you've heard, click subscribe and follow to make sure you don't miss an episode. And if you want to learn more, head over to www.ivfthiscoaching.com to learn how to work together.